Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. I'm Matt, and I am back this week with another solo podcast, and I want to discuss some pretty cool things with you guys this week. So, to set the scene, I've been training for a 500-pound squat, honestly, for over 2 years now. Ever since I first stepped on the platform with USPC and realized what was available to me in squatting, I think it was just over 300 pounds, my first competition. It was another one of those moments where I realized there's a whole level of potential beyond anything I could have ever realized. For most of my lifting career, since about beginning of 2018 is when I started, tail end of 2017, I thought that squatting just would not be for me, given what I faced with the prosthetic and the challenges that come with being an amputee and being confident and being just confident, let alone strong on your feet or on your prosthetic. I assumed squatting would not be for me. I did try dabbling in squatting a little bit in those early years of lifting, but I never really put too much effort into it. I couldn't hit depth at all, even at light weights, and I was never stable or controlled. So, never really put much into it. Then I go on through my career further and further, and I see other amputees, particularly Casey Mitchell was one who really opened some doors for me. He was at one point chasing a 500-pound squat, and I thought, man, there's more here. But I still didn't chase it for a long time. It was not actually until I got to Monsters Bent Barbell and joined the Saturday squat crew there. And for the first time, I learned how to squat. Even though I'd been training for several years at that point, I learned how to do it. Learned how to do it safely, effectively, learned how to control the weight through the movement, how to keep tight through the movement, how to control your breathing through the movement. So many aspects that a bunch of tiny little pieces that come together and add up to the perfect squat. And back in 2023, when I did that first squat with USPC and we formed the para division of their entire lifting apparatus, I always had, at first I had the idea of squatting 400, and that came about a year later. And after I squatted 400, I realized I wanted 500. In the same way that I wanted a 500-pound deadlift, there's something about putting 500 pounds on my back and moving through that movement that just spoke to the soul, spoke to every fiber of who I am and what I stand for. And since that moment, I've actually been deeply in love with the squat. It's a movement that I think for any lifter, whether you're an amputee or not an amputee, it puts you in the absolute most vulnerable position out of the three lifts involved in powerlifting. And pretty much more than most lifts out there. With the squat, you put a heavy, unbearable amount of weight on your back. A weight that you can't even imagine standing there and holding, let alone moving to a full depth squat position and then coming back up with that weight. And for me, that vulnerability is amplified, given the fact that I'm on a prosthetic, which I cannot control. I have no ankle movement on that side. I have pretty much no quad action out of that side. It's all posterior chain driven for me. When I come down to a squatting position, it is about as vulnerable as I can physically be. And then I come up with a weight that could crush me, that could break my prosthetic, that could cause so many potentialities. And so it's the most dangerous lift that I do on a regular basis. But it is also by far the most rewarding. And it's because I face this immense fear and this immense vulnerability on a weekly basis, and have done so for years and years at this point, that lift speaks so deeply to my soul. And I don't take undue risk or unnecessary risks in safety, because I train with the very best at Monsters Men Barbell. They keep me safe. They've taught me how to squat safely. I know when I can go and when I need to pull back. I know when a pick is good and when it's not good, thanks to my current coach. And so many aspects of this movement, which takes more control and precision than probably any other movement we do on the platform. So many aspects of this. I've been so fortunate to learn and grow in all of these areas, from the insight and the wisdom and the knowledge and the willingness to explore and drive innovation and find new ways to do things, new ways to adapt to the challenges that I face. It's been an incredible group effort getting to this moment. And while I hesitate to throw a label on it like a world record, I'm currently not aware of any amputee who has ever squatted 500 pounds in competition. It doesn't mean it hasn't happened. I've just not been able to find it anywhere. And you guys know that Austin and I, we don't really get so worked up about like records or titles or placements or dots or anything like that. Because for us, so many of the battles we face and what we've done for so long, our battles have always been internally driven. And because they're so internally driven, they're also met with internal intrinsic reward. And not that one drive is better than the other, but it's a pretty cool place to be when you find all of your reward purely from personal drive and satisfaction. For me, it works great because, as we've said many times, we're never going to be the highest of prowess when it comes to physical athleticism. I don't know that we were born with the genetics for that. And for a second, because of the significant health challenges we faced from chemotherapy and ECMO, and for me, amputation, we're just not going to be setting humanity-shattering records. That's fine with us. But what we can do is we can redefine the standards of human potential. Because anybody can do that. Anybody listening to this episode right now, you have that same potential. Because we all have challenges we face. We all have reasons we shouldn't be able to go do something. And if you have a dream for something you want to achieve that you, for some reason, should not be able to do, I would challenge you to explore it. I would challenge you to maybe take a few steps down the path of what it would take to get there. Because, and I'll bring this video back to show you guys, but back in, I believe it was 2018, might have been 2019, I've got an old video I've saved on my phone of me squatting 135 pounds on the bar, and I'm very, very shaky coming down, don't hit depth, very shaky coming up. And I love going back and watching that video because I can remember that gym I was training in. I remember the path I was on at that time. I remember the direction. Like, I have such visceral remembrance of that moment. And when I kind of quasi squatted that 135, man, I thought I'd made it. I thought, you know what? This is an incredible achievement for an amputee on a squat. I'm good here. I don't need more than this. And if if somebody would have walked in and told that kid that one day he'd be stepping on a platform to squat 500 pounds in front of an entire crowd as part of the very first ever full power para meet, his jaw would hit the floor. He would not have believed you. But that's the thing about potential. We all set personal limits in our mind of, oh, I can't do this or I can't do that, or maybe I could get there, but I'd have to have perfect circumstances, or that's just not for me, or I used to be good at that, but I just can't get there anymore. We all do that all the time with so many different things. It's subconscious in a lot of cases, and that's fine. But here's the thing about our subconscious, or what I would call default mode. You can train that system. You can rewire that system to where when you hear certain triggers or certain ideas, you immediately think something else instead. That's something I've been thankfully successful in doing for myself. Whenever I hear challenge, my brain is immediately thinking of how can we adapt to that? How can we overcome that? I won't say I never have moments where my brain goes to negative places of, oh, that can't happen or we can't do that. Everybody does that. We're all human. We're all susceptible to that. But as we said last week with Clayton, our life's goal, our mission is for those moments where we lapse in our purpose, lapse in our drive. We make those windows as small as possible, ideally getting them down to seconds or even hundreds of seconds before we immediately turn around and we're back on the proper path. And that's something we're able to successfully do on a very regular basis. To the point that now, when I squatted 300 pounds 2 years ago, I was able to think, wonder what it'd be like to squat 400. And when I squatted 400, I thought, man, what would it be like to squat 500? And I couldn't be more excited to report to you guys that as I'm recording this, yesterday, I squatted with 500 pounds on my back. I picked a weight up out of the rack, 500 pounds, let it sink into my shoulders, let myself feel the pressure, took in a breath, locked in my core, held it. And in that moment, I had a decision to make. I either drop down with this weight to the most physically vulnerable position I can imagine, or I re-rack it. Fortunately for me, I'm surrounded with some of the best humans and best lifters I know, incredible men and women of strength who make that decision a non-issue. After that breath, I make that decision, and I start to sink down, slowly, keeping tight, keeping control, feeling the weight move on my back as I sink lower and lower and lower. I sink past the point where I feel comfortable holding it. I force myself to go lower, lower still, lower than feels necessary, and then 1 inch below that. Hitting depth, I immediately engage every fiber of my posterior chain, every fiber I can squeeze out of my quads, every fiber I can force into pressure in my core, and I will that weight to rise. It rises just as slowly as it sank, but there was no lapse in control, no loss in momentum, and that weight came up and locked out at the top. 500 pounds as an amputee. Now, I will give one caveat to this. I did have on attached to the bar what are called reverse orange mini bands. For people who are not powerlifters, basically what that is is there are these stretchy bands, almost like rubber bands, but much more heavy duty. And there's all different sizes with all different strengths of resistance. And you can either work against bands, like you're pushing the weight into the bands, creating more tension through the lift, or you can do what we call reverse bands, where the band's attached to the bar and they're attached to something above the bar that make it a little bit easier at the hardest part of the lift. It allows your body to overload through a weight that it may not be ready for yet. And we were all set to do reverse red mini bands, but when we were warming up, we realized those reverse red mini bands were taking off 80 to 100 pounds at the bottom. And I knew I was stronger than that. I knew I had more potential than that. And fortunately, the men and women at Monsters Bent Barbell knew that as well. And they were not about to let me leave potential on the table, which is why I love them so dearly and why I would never attempt to lift like this without them by my side. So we go to the orange mini reverse bands. We measured out, they're only taking 20 pounds off the bottom. So basically, as I'm moving through this lift, at the very top where I unrack the weight, that is 500 full pounds sitting on my back. As I start to sink down, those bands build up a little bit of tension. And at the very bottom, my deepest part of the squat, the bands are lifting about 20 pounds off that bar for me. So it's about 480 pounds at the bottom, which is still more weight than I've ever squatted in my life. And as I come back up through the lift, that tension lessens and lessens and lessens to where when I get to a point of being about 60% of the way up, there's no help from the bands anymore. So while it's not a full 500-pound squat that I can claim as a personal victory, it is within a whisper of that. And I'm not going to lie, guys, it felt good. And I know that had I taken those bands off and had I had to squat 500 full pounds that day, I could have. But as anybody who's ever done a powerlifting program or any sort of athletic program knows, you have to stick to the program. There's times where you do need to switch things up and divert from the program. And that's when you rely on yourself to really know your body and your team to really know you as an athlete. And that's something we did. And we switched from the red mini bands to the orange mini bands. And I'd texted my coach Curtis, who gave me the go-ahead if it really felt like something we were ready for, and I knew I had it. And in doing that, it provided perfect overload for the last squat of this prep. And now I'll have about 2 to 3 weeks of rest before I step on the platform on August 23rd to become, as far as I'm aware, the first amputee to squat 500 pounds in competition. And that's a pretty cool feeling. But, regardless of whether I'm really the first or not, for me, doesn't really matter. For me, I know that what I've put together, both through my own work as well as the invaluable help of my coach Curtis Miller, who's been on this podcast, as well as the unwavering strength and support and commitment of the men and women of Monsters Bent Barbell and United States Powerlifting Coalition. What we've all come together to build and put together for what's coming on this platform in 3 weeks is going to be not just the very highest potential for me in this movement, but it will be something beyond that. Because the way things moved yesterday, I'm here to tell you, I'm set to squat over 500 pounds come that third attempt. And I love these moments because with prep wrapping to a close, it's been hours and hours of work and my body breaking down and fighting illness and fighting anemia and fighting so many challenges that come up that barely even register for me anymore because I'm so used to fighting them with all of these endeavors we chase. This is the point where we get the calm before the storm. The work's put in. Now we just need to recover and let the result of this journey, the destination, play out. And I love these moments because these are the moments where I really get to put in the work on the mind. Yes, it comes throughout all of prep. I have to continually face that deep, nauseating fear every single time I warm up on the squat bar. When we were doing warm-ups yesterday, there was a point where I did a 402-pound squat. And I did that, and it moved well, but it felt fairly heavy. And the only thing running through my mind, as soon as I re-rack that weight, is how do I add 100 pounds on top of this? Because I'd already felt like I was getting close to my very maximum effort. And I still had 100 pounds to go that day. If you guys have ever done endurance racing or powerlifting or any other crazy athletic or mentally taxing endeavor, you know that place of fear where those questions come up. How? What if? Why? Those can be crippling places to be for the mind and the spirit. And this is why Austin and I put so much emphasis on training the mind and the spirit. Because these are the areas where we find our very highest potential. These are the areas where we become impossible. Everything we preach. This is where it's done. Because again, like we talked with Clayton last week, as much as we never like to accept limitations. In fact, we say limitations do not exist. We all have a genetic potential cap that we would reach at some point or another. No matter how much time or energy or effort we put into something, there may be certain things that are just not physically available to us. But I do not believe that the same rule applies to the mind and the spirit. Since those are areas that can be infinitely strengthened, infinitely grown, infinitely developed, when you can learn to gain control of them and grow them and strengthen them in these ways, and then channel that into your own physical capability, that's when you achieve things beyond anything you could have ever dreamed. That's where you do the impossible. And that's really been the name of our game since before we even started Impossible Performance, is using our mind and our spirit to change our physiology even, to pull out a higher level of potential than should even be possible. Because the mind is naturally programmed to want to limit you. It wants you to ask those questions. It wants you to give into that fear. It wants you to stop early, to keep you safe. And it's a good thing it does that. Otherwise, we'd all live such risky lives that we probably wouldn't be around here for very long to tell these stories or learn these lessons, let alone pass them down. We're programmed to be that way, and for good reason. Where we need to get to is to where we have full autonomous control over these domains when we need them. It's not a place I go to all the time. I don't even go there every single training session. Certainly not every single day. But on the sessions, on the specific reps, on the specific lifts where I really need it, I'll bring it out and I'll go there. And I'll strengthen that piece just a little bit more. And that's how I go from 402 feeling heavy to me yesterday to adding 100 pounds on, and 501.2 moved well, felt good. Nothing had changed for me physically in the 20 or 30 minutes that passed between those two squats, except that I probably had a little more fatigue and breakdown by the time I got to the 500, meaning that I was actually in physically a little bit worse of a position to squat that weight. So nothing positive had moved for me physically in those 30 minutes between those two reps. All the work was done mentally and spiritually. And I'm fortunate that I've been able to do this enough times now that I know exactly what triggers I need. I know exactly what place I need to go to. I know exactly how to pull that part of me forth. That part of me that does not accept limitations. That lives with the fear. That can be comfortable in the challenge. And that can walk forward with it. Not letting it control me, not letting it guide me, but rather me carrying these emotions, carrying these feelings, carrying these thoughts through the action and letting them go once it's complete. And that's a place that I know everybody can get to, because I used to be crippled by all of these things. I used to let so much fear control me, so much questioning of what if dictate my life, so much uncertainty and disbelief in myself and my own potential decide my future. And my life changed the day I took control of that. And it's not a 1-minute decision and everything's different for you. It's a process. It's a skill. Something you have to learn and grow and build over time. And one that Austin and I are very dedicated to continue talking about and laying out a process and a path for everyone who wants to go down this journey. It's going to be our main mission going forward. And it's going to be everything we hope to do with Impossible Performance. Help others tap into this mental and spiritual aspect of life's greatest challenges that can bring out greater potential than we could have ever dreamed. Because we've both done it many times now in our own lives, and we know that if it's accessible to us, it's accessible to everyone. We just have to train it. Just like we train our squats, we train our legs, we train our biceps, we train every area of our bodies in the gym. We can use these same mechanisms to train our mental and spiritual strength and capability. And just like on a squat, if you only train your posterior chain, you're leaving a lot of potential on the table by not training your quads. Same process here. If you only train the physical body and neglect the mind and the spirit, you are leaving infinite potential on the table for where you can go. Because that mind will hold you back. It will shut you down if you let it. We've all felt those moments on a lift, whether it's on the platform in competition or not. We've all felt those moments in life where the fear of attempting something is so great that we decide to not pursue it at all. It's that choice I talked about. When you unrack the weight and you make that decision, am I going to go down or am I going to put it back? That's where the mind and the spirit come most into play. And for me, I go to a very specific place. There's been a few episodes where I've definitely discussed my journey with cancer, my journey through amputation, many times on the show. But one area of my life that I've not really put out to, honestly, hardly anyone, and definitely not on the show, is my time on ECMO. For those of you who may not know what ECMO is, because I certainly didn't until until I was on it, till after I was on it, ECMO is extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. It's basically an artificial set of heart and lungs. There's different types of it, but the type I had was basically working as my heart and as my lungs. My chemo had gotten so intense, my immune system was so wiped out that the chemo actually ate a hole in my colon and let all of that bacteria and waste fill into my abdominal cavity. And then my body had no way to fight it off. So I developed gangrene as well as several other bloodstream infections, to which there's no reason I should have been able to survive. And even today, many of the medical personnel who treated me then still can't believe that I came out alive, let alone physically and mentally functional in any regard, let alone being blessed enough to be able to go out and run marathons and compete in powerlifting. But when I had those infections, they had to put me on this machine because I started going into organ failure. My liver was shutting down. My kidneys were shutting down. My heart and lungs were next. In this machine, they put a giant catheter into your carotid artery in your neck and into your femoral vein in your leg. They pump the blood out, filter it, oxygenate it, and pump it back into your body. So it's acting as a heart in that it pumps the blood through your body. It's acting as lungs in that it can oxygenate and give the appropriate gaseous amounts to your body for you. When I'm on this machine, I'm hooked up to 6 or 7 different IV poles, all running multiple pumps, many, many lines going into my body to keep everything perfectly balanced. And there's a tech who has to be there at my bedside running this machine 24 hours a day, completely nonstop. It's how delicate of a place it is. And when I'm on this machine, I'm totally unconscious. I'm in a coma. I have no idea that I'm on this machine or anything going on. But during this time, I experienced horrific, what the doctors have called are hallucinations. And maybe that's what they were. But I'm here to tell you they are still to this day clearly imprinted in my mind and are more vivid and real than almost anything I've experienced in my life. I have not forgotten 1 second of them, as you do with dreams. I remember every minute of what felt like weeks and months and years while I was trapped in this area. Things that I could not have come up with in my worst of nightmares. For a long time, I thought I would never share these with you guys. And still to this day, there's less than 5 people I've ever shared these hallucinations, we'll call them, with. And I'm not going to share them today. But I believe here in the near future, I'll be able to share them with you. Not to incite fear or worry or upsetness into anyone, but almost more as a form of therapy. And for those who have been haunted by similar experiences, because these are the experiences that haunted me. These are the experiences that drove my alcoholism and addiction. These are the experiences that drove me to my very darkest point in life. So for others who have faced similar experiences, I want them to know that they're not alone, and I want them to know there's a way out of it. But beyond all of that, anytime I've put words to these experiences, even though words can't fully describe everything I witnessed, every time I've done it, there's been a great feeling of relief that follows. A feeling of unburdening, unpackaging, releasing a lot of stored up emotion and fear that I've carried for a long time since then. And now being on the path that we're on, with the new chapter we're about to unfold following this competition, I can't think of much more fitting than to share this with everyone who supports us, everyone who has made Impossible Performance into what it is today and what it will grow to be in the future. It would be a deep honor to be able to share those darkest moments with you guys, and hopefully it inspires you guys to be able to do that in the same way with those that you love and trust the most in your life. Because I know just as well as anyone, those are some of the most impossible tasks to face in life. And when I'm under the squat bar, a lot of those moments come back to me. There's one moment specifically, one place that I go to when I'm under that bar. And it's actually just after I got off ECMO and started the process of waking up from my coma. If you guys have never been around anybody in a coma, it's not at all like how it is on the movies where they just wake up and realize everything's okay and now we're all happy and everything's fine going forward. It's a slow, arduous, agonizing process where you'll come to reality for just a moment and then slip back out of it and come to and slip back out and come to and slip back out. And hopefully, slowly over time, you get to spend more time in reality and less time out of it until eventually you're fully back to reality as we understand it. That was the process for me. But one of those first days where I had started to come out of it a little bit, when I woke up, I'd been on paralytics for 2 weeks straight. My body and my muscles had atrophied to the point I couldn't even lift my own arm to scratch my nose. A physical therapist had come into the room literally to do nothing else than to bend my joints, to move my arms, to move my legs, to try to get things circulating a little bit, to try to push some fluid out and push some blood into the muscles. It's all she was there to do, to bend my legs, to bend my arms. And I remember begging with her, pleading with her like I've never have for anything else in my life, just to be able to sit up. I'd been laying flat on a hard hospital bed for 2 weeks straight, and all I wanted was to sit up, a change in position, a moment of relief from all of the pain and suffering. And she had to tell me no. Not because she didn't want me to have that relief, but because my body could not physically handle sitting up at that point in time. I had to work for weeks just to get strong enough physically to withstand the change in pressure that your body undergoes from laying down to sitting up. And I remember tears pouring out of my eyes as she left the room, because all that kid wanted was to sit up, to stand up, to move again. And he couldn't. So, as I'm approaching the squat, as I put my belt on and I'm starting to sniff my ammonia. And I've got two very specific songs I play that for whatever reason have always spoken to me and pulled this part out of me, emotionally speaking. I start thinking about that kid, start thinking about that hospital, start thinking about those hallucinations, letting that time period come back to me. I walk up to the bar and I'm hyper-focused on each individual piece of knurling. That fear is running rampant in my stomach. But I welcome it as a sign that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be, under exactly the amount of weight I should be facing. Because the worse that fear is, the greater the challenge it is I'm facing. The greater the impossible I'm putting myself through. And I always focus on bringing forth a sense of gratitude in that moment. Thankfulness for just having the ability to get under that bar. When I do that, it brings a positive wave through me that helps dull the fear, dull the worry. I get under the bar and I go through every step, every motion of the setup as perfectly as I can. And the very last thing I do is I'm taking that last breath in before I unrack the weight. As I actually, in my mind, put myself back in the body of that kid who had just come off ECMO, just woken up from a coma, just experienced horrific hallucination that words alone cannot describe, and all he wants to do is to stand up. I put myself back in that position. And I almost envision it as if I get behind that kid and I lift him up. As I take that weight and I unrack it and I feel it sink into my shoulders. And I take that final breath and I lock in. I feel nothing but strength, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that ultimately bleeds into me physically. And I sit down with that weight on my back, with every focus and intention of hitting deep enough in the squat to hit full depth, to go to the very most vulnerable place I can with a crushing amount of weight on my back. And once I hit that point, I stand up. I stand up for that kid who couldn't. And in that way, I give him strength to get through the impossible he is living through. And in return, he gives me strength to live out everything he's destined to. And as I've said before, whether or not that weight moves, even though I very rarely fail a squat because of that exact process I walk myself through, even when I do fail it, whether or not I come up with that weight does not actually matter to me. What matters to me is that I hit full depth. I had the courage to go to that most vulnerable place, the courage to show up and do exactly what I said I was going to do, and the strength to make that switch at the bottom of the lift where I feel nothing but a channel of strength flowing between me and that kid. And I know that's very ethereal, kind of in the air, spiritual, emotional things, which we don't always like to talk about or acknowledge in society. But I will promise you, for me, there are few things I experience that are more real than those moments. Every time I've hit a major squat on the platform, it's been because of that exact process. And it has very little to do with my own physical strength and almost everything to do with my mental, emotional, and spiritual strength. And I know that so many of you guys are facing challenges like that today. There are mental barriers, emotional barriers, spiritual challenges you have to face and overcome with any challenge you're facing in life, whether it be physical through athletics or lifting, or whether it be otherwise something entirely outside of that realm. I know there are challenges you're facing. And I know there are times where these areas, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, hold you back and keep you from your dreams, keep you from finding that highest potential. I know that it happens because I've been there. I lived so much of my life in that place. And it's not bad. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. In fact, you may be doing everything right. We're not here to call anybody out or to challenge anybody and say that they aren't living life correctly. What we're here to do is for those who want to unlock that path to infinite strength, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and create instances, processes where that bleeds over physically into reality. We're here to guide you in that path. Because it has been the number one thing that has changed Austin and I's life in ways we never could have dreamed of. It's the number one advantage, skill, blessing, gift, whatever word you want to put on it. It is the number one strength that we have. And we know that it's something available to everyone. And because of that universality, and where we know the kind of potential it can lead to, it's our goal in life to share that with everyone. To help everyone tap into these domains of performance that are not often talked about, rarely accessed, and rarely utilized. It's why we're called impossible performance. Performance in the face of the impossible. Becoming impossible to perform in impossible ways. It's been the backbone of everything we've done since day one, and it will be even stronger going forth. So I want to thank you guys for being on this journey with us. And I'm especially excited for what's to come. And we cannot wait to share it with you. Now my mission is to live out this calm. The calm before the storm. that will come on August 23rd. To recover and to stretch and repair and heal everything that I've endured through this prep. To prepare the mind and the spirit for what it's about to undergo. And most importantly, to become that impossible version of myself. That version that never could have, should have existed for that kid who laid in that hospital bed, unable to sit up. That version who is capable of squatting 500 pounds. And I know he's going to do it. For everyone who's been on this journey with me as part of this 500, whether you've been there to help me train, or you've coached me in some way, or you've helped feed me in some way, or just been an incredible amount of moral and emotional support through this journey, I cannot thank you enough. This is absolutely not something that would have happened by myself. It takes a community effort. It takes a team effort. It takes a group of people, all dedicated, all holding an unruly faith in their own potential and the potential of those they support to create something like this. And I could not be more excited for it to come. So for you guys who have been in this journey, thank you. And we can't wait to see what happens August 23rd. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it gave you some insight into how my process looks when I'm facing the impossible, and why this movement means so much to me, why I do what I do, and why specifically I'm chasing the 500 pounds. And let this set the stage for what's to come on August 23rd, when we see so many incredible athletes, and specifically our para lifters, our adaptive and para lifters, who face all sorts of challenge, whether it's amputation or cerebral palsy or dwarfism, or they're paralyzed in some way. Athletes facing an array of challenges, all adapting to the circumstance, all finding their highest potential under the bar. As USPC and Monsters Bent Barbell paves the way for these athletes to come out and perform, to find their highest levels of strength, and to do the impossible. Thank you guys for listening. As always, the only thing we ask is that you share this episode with someone you know who you believe it would help, because that is how we live out our mission to create our vision at Impossible Performance, because we are building a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you guys for Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for lifting. We'll catch you on August 23rd, and as always, be impossible.